but you heard from Ray. He's working on that, and hopefully we can see some resolution to that problem, which you'd think that it's not just Guam, but across the country. So thanks, Ray, for joining us on the show. And we're going to go now back into the Zoom room where we have got Superintendent of the Guam Department of Education, Jon Fernandez. Good morning, Jon.
Good day and good morning, Sabrina and Andy and Jason. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. You certainly kept all of us busy in the media yesterday with all the press conferences that happened. So, I'm just going to let you go ahead and give us the progress report, because there's certainly a lot going on with GDOE.
Right. Well, I thought it might be anticlimactic since we see you every week, and hopefully we've been leading up to this final decision. But yes, of course, a final decision by the board's not final until they take an official action. And there were some moving parts toward the end there. So basically, yesterday, when it comes to the decision about being able to reopen our schools, the board did meet in a special meeting, and they passed a resolution that authorizes us to move forward once the governor gives her approval to reopen school facilities for face-to-face instruction. And of course, there are a lot of parameters and rules and restrictions in place. So the expectation is that if the governor does authorize us to come back during the second semester, the beginning of the second semester, which begins January 4th. We do plan to continue with all three models of learning. So online and hard copy will continue, and January 4th, those students should expect to be back and doing their work. But face-to-face instruction, we're going to give 2 weeks from that starting point to allow for teachers and staff to receive the training that they need for a return to the school facilities, and also, if possible, to have some orientation opportunities for parents and students to be done safely, and then they can know what to expect leading into the first day of classes. Again, if we are able to start, with the January 4th, the first day of face-to-face instruction would be 2 weeks later, and that would be January 19th at the earliest. Obviously, the governor hasn't made a final determination. But when she does, and when she selects, a date for that start, we would still, provide that 2-week transition period for face-to-face instruction, again, to accommodate the necessary training and the necessary, the orientations, just to give everybody an extra sense of comfort in being able to come back to school and reorient themselves before we bring children back. We did get the registration process complete for the number of students. And I don't know if you've heard, but at this point, even though there's some, numbers we have to reconcile and, with details at the school level, it looks like at the elementary level, we have about 33% of students who are registered to come back. At middle school, it's 21%. And at high school, we're talking about only 11%. So this does allow, the parents, of course, and students to have a choice as to whether they feel safe to come back. Back in August, we were talking about more, along the lines of 40% across the board, looking at who was registered to come back. We've since gone through a shutdown and a much tougher COVID-19 experience. So I'm sure that parents and students are still nervous about what to expect and uncertain and are opting to stay in distance learning. And then, for those who do feel that they're safe to return and that they're in need of returning, the numbers are going to allow us to start off, I think, relatively safely, because they're at really low levels, which of course, if you have a low number of students on campus, that'll allow you to initiate your temperature checks and get everybody used to the new routines and the new ways of getting around campus, the physical distancing. And so there is a silver lining there that, if it's a place to start, we'll start with low numbers and be able to implement all of our safety requirements. And then, once everybody gets used to that and is able to feel confident in making any of the adjustments that are needed, perhaps at that point, the situation will be that more students can then return to face-to-face, and so on and so forth. So I look at it as a good thing. It's a starting point. It's not really the end goal. But so long as the governor determines that the community is in a position to open schools, that would be our plan: a 2-week transition, face-to-face, starting with with the students who registered. They may be low numbers, but it does give us a chance to open safely and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. So, just looking at those numbers that you said, like, for example, the 11% for high schools, are we looking at like a one person for class, or this?
Right.
It
So,
seems really low.
the schools, of course, are in charge of the schedules. Right. They're going to be the
Mm-hmm.
ones finalizing the schedule for their students. The high school, of course, is based on the subjects that the students need to take. And then, the elementary school is at the particular grade level much more straightforward. And so, what we really were hoping for was to make sure we got to this point where we could actually see real numbers, instead of just kind of speculating that they would be the same as the summer. So the numbers are lower. So the schools right now are going to work through this process of aligning the number of students to their schedules and figuring out exactly how to provide the face-to-face instruction under those circumstances. I'm not gonna want to confuse the issue at this point, but
Mm-hmm.
it does raise the question of, well, do we need to be in 3 cohorts, right? Because the plan is that even if it's just 11%, that number is supposed to be divided into three groups, alternating days. So I'm sure there's going to be discussion about, how is this going to work under the 3 cohort plan? How is it going to work in terms of the number of teachers you need on campus versus the ones who can continue to do distance learning? It's going to be a lot of work just starting now to align all of those factors. But again, it's this is an issue that I think is puts us in a better position than where we were looking at maybe 40% or higher numbers coming back to school. This will, I think, hopefully give some comfort to our teachers and staff on the front lines, trying to anticipate what it's going to look like when school starts. So for instance, Southern High School, what we're talking about is 25 students who've registered for, return to face-to-face instruction. If they were to go into 3 groups, it would be about 8, students per group in a school campus of 2,500. That could fit to 2,500 students. So if somebody says, "Hey, how are you going to implement physical distancing?" Well, that's very easy. So in that case, so we'll look at, those are the issues that I hope, principals and teachers will say, okay, now that we know the numbers are not that high, what do we need to do to just make sure that it all works and we can, implement all of these COVID-19 adjustments calmly and, smoothly, when we get back to face-to-face. So we'll continue to work with the schools on that.
Mm-hmm. What, it's still a month out. What if a parent changes their mind, and decides, what, I think I will have my child go back to face? Can they still do that?
At this point, the answer is no. We need to make sure we get to a point where we at least begin the implementation, because I think the challenge is that the numbers keep changing, and especially if they change dramatically, it's going to impact our schedules, our ability to physically distance. We want to make sure we start off without too much disruption and instability and uncertainty. So at least for the start, we're planning to hold to that deadline of December 18th for registration, and we will hopefully begin to implement. And once we feel that we're stable and everything's working, then we can revisit the changes maybe toward the end of third quarter. If that's the case. So we'll see how many what the reaction is of parents. We know many of them are going to wait and see how it's going, of course. But again, it's going to be too disruptive to our teachers and staff to deal with different numbers, trying to make sure we know which model of learning they're in and make the transition from one model to another. And then, of course, if we do it one way, there's going to be those who say, can we do it the other way? Can we change 1-2 times? And we've had that experience over the last semester, and it's been tough to manage.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I feel like I should raise my hand here in class and wait to be called on. But has there been any talk of maybe a dedicated standalone online public school, Guam Online Elementary or Middle, for those that are just not comfortable at all sending their kids back?
Right now,
Catch the holiday
no.
soundtrack
Right now
starting December 1st.
We're doing online at every school, and mostly because we have to shift so quickly to be able to serve all the students who wanted that option. But again, down the road, that looks like it's one of the ideas we need to explore. I think there's been a general agreement from our teachers, our administrators, and our central office team. As we work on implementing distance learning and using technology in a more central way, there does seem, and of course, with all the experience, now that we've implemented it and we've had a chance to try it out, I think there's going to really be a good discussion about how to maintain and sustain the online learning option. And again, not even just for COVID-19. I mean, at some point we hope to get through COVID-19, but down the road, I mean, you can see how this might help different sets of students with different types of needs. So for instance, especially like advanced students, sometimes you get students who are really just excelling, but there are not enough of them to like set up a different class just for their advanced subject or their AP subject. But using technology, we might be able to, get enough students like that across the district and do an online course just for them. So there's ways that for those who are really excelling to take advantage. There's ways for those who need additional interventions to be able to use online supports in addition to their face-to-face instruction. There are other opportunities. We have a lot of students in non-traditional circumstances. Might be that they might have a lot of family responsibilities. They might, if teenagers are pregnant, want to continue their education. Those who need to work. Older students who just need to do credit recovery. There are different ways that we can use online learning to facilitate those needs. So that's an exciting conversation and the silver lining to the COVID-19 situation. What's good is that you have a lot more teachers who say, oh yeah, I know how to do that versus, last summer. I think last summer everybody was, what are you talking about, Zoom and Google Meet and what happens when we get online? And there's been a lot of that, especially in the beginning of the year, a lot of that technical support needed and the additional maybe social and emotional support. Look, we're going to get through this, but that first month, it's amazing. And of course, the kids play a very, very strong role in that. They're the first ones to tell the teacher, you sent this and you wanted us to fill it out, but how am I supposed to fill it out? Right? I don't have a tablet, or I need to print it, or it's been a really, despite the challenge, it's been a great opportunity to really dive in. And as challenging as it is, I think we'll come out of it with extra abilities and capacities to do new things. So that's going to be something we look forward to.
Yeah, when I was doing the Touch of Class segment, interviewing some of your teachers, they all said the same thing. They said, hey, we're doing our best, and we just want patience from the students and the parents. And, as you said, learning as you go, nobody had a playbook from day one. So learning as we went, but I'm sure you'll agree, your teachers have been amazing through all this.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a different set of dynamics. So the teachers are making that adjustment, and I do know that they've been asking for patience from the community to allow us to get through this period. I mean, even those school districts who have an online component, they weren't doing it for all students, right? It's just for those particular sets of students. So it really has been an experience for everybody. And like I said, I do appreciate that. The funny thing about this movement into technology is that the kids are actually a very critical part of that improvement, because they're the digital natives, right? So they're the ones who can fix things. They're the ones who can help you do it better. We should welcome their. It's funny to listen, because the kids don't hold back. They just illustrate, hear their comments and suggestions. I think it's one of those things where we say, okay, we want to get better. What do the students say, and what do the students think, and what do they suggest about improvements, so that we can be better as digital citizens. And the other thing, of course, that I think is tough for teachers that I've noticed is that you can get some teachers who are just fantastic in the classroom because they have that face-to-face, they have that charisma, they have the strategies to engage, they're interacting with the kids. That doesn't just translate online automatically. So, you're finding a group of teachers who are just really good at the online, who may have, even some of the newer teachers who may not have been experienced in the classroom, going online and producing content and making it entertaining because they might be more used to technology. Some of our teachers who are really great in the classroom but have a more difficult time transitioning, starting to learn that there are different techniques you have to use online that are just going to be a different facet of instruction that you're not used to. But we certainly, believe that you have the same skills and the same capacities. It's just, a new environment. So a lot of learning going on for all groups involved. But again, it is, like you said, it's a tough situation because it's it's a health and safety, pandemic, that we're going through. But there are a lot of bright spots that we should be looking forward to once we get to a point where things are safe. We've learned a lot, and we need to just build on that.
John, how's this gonna work when we return face to face? Are all teachers going to be going back to the campuses, or some that are doing distance learning going to stay, working at home? How does this all
Right.
work
So
out?
there's going to be, again, this is one of those things at our school level that need to be arranged at the school level. So the plan is on January 4th, online and hard copy continue. So those are not to be interrupted.
Okay.
Those are going to continue, and then face-to-face starts on the 19th. Those 2 weeks will, the school administrators understand that they are to provide training to their employees, but they're going to have to arrange their schedules accordingly so that they can ensure that teachers and staff have the opportunity to participate. So they're going to work that schedule out to ensure there's enough time and opportunity to do that training. Some of the training is going to be live, like synchronously, like we're doing here, and some of it will be asynchronous, where the teacher can go to a webinar and go through that, and have to certify their completion of that online training. So there's going to be a combination available to the schools. But again, for the teachers and staff, we're going to work through, the schedule so that we can accommodate those who are closing out, their grades and other things for their kids for the end of the second semester, and then being able to shift to training and do so within their schedules. Mm-hmm. So right now, we're going to let the school administrators work on meeting the needs of their employees.
Mm-hmm. What is the update on special education students? They also going to be going face to face?
Well, we had a good conversation with our representatives of the Guam Advisory Panel for Students with Disabilities, and these are many of our parents and advocates, and also reached out to other parents. So there are a lot of questions and issues that were raised. Not everything is going to be answered right up, at this particular point. Some of that will take us getting back to school and working on solutions. But we did agree with them that, we were thinking about ways we know that this population is probably the most in need of returning to school for face-to-face instruction and for services that can be provided at school. But they were very, I guess, wise in suggesting that we don't do something that's only for our students with disabilities, and we want to make sure that our typical students are also there, and that we don't kind of set them aside as if they're a different kind of group, and identify who they are, and for many different reasons, and also with the need to practice safe, practices. It helps to have typical classmates and others around to model. So there needed to be a more integrated approach, even though I think they understood the intent was to make sure that can we get you back so we can meet your needs. That they suggested that we look at ways not to set apart our students with special needs. So we definitely took that to heart and said we're not going to do that. We're going to make sure that when we do open and when we're ready to open, we'll include the group, everybody who's in that grade level will be able to be provided an opportunity to register. Now they're the ones, the parents are the ones who determine whether they feel that they're safe enough to come back. So they would have had to register, and those numbers reflect that maybe not every student with special needs has registered, because we know some are medically challenged, and there might be some uncertainty about the safety of the ability for their child to maintain the protective in the mask and so forth. So there might be parents who say we're not ready yet, but again, for those who do come back, the intent is to revert back to their IEPs, their individualized educational plans, which were in place prior to the pandemic. That plan really specifies how education and how services are delivered to that student within the school setting. And it's our hope that we can revert to that and implement those plans. If they need to make adjustments for any reason, obviously that's when the team of parents and professionals and teachers come together to make those decisions. So that'll allow us a better return to being able to provide those services to our students versus doing it in a virtual environment, which was really, really challenging to do on all sides.
So, but they have been receiving education. Are they participating, whether it's
Well,
online or hard copy?
they've been receiving the education and services that were possible and authorized to take place during this environment. But again, not the parents are certainly, and even the educators are not satisfied, with some of the things that happen in a virtual environment. You just can't replace certain services and certain things, and some of the services could not be provided, by through virtual means. So there is telehealth and teletherapy that's available, but some of our families will say that that's not working for our kids, so we opt out of it. And when we return for face to face, we like to those services to be made up. So we understand that, and that's why it's important that we see what we can do to provide them an opportunity to come back to school.
What about transportation? Where are we with that? Everything's ready to
Well,
go?
for special education, we run our own buses, so that'll be something we'll manage again for those students as normal. The buses at DPW, we've had a couple meetings, maybe 3 meetings recently in the last 3 weeks or 2 weeks to make sure and that we're all the details are being worked out, and then we meet every Monday until the start of the school year, just to ensure that all contingencies are planned for. So right now we understand that there will be staggered seating and limited capacity on the school buses. Face masks will be required, as well as I believe we're working on the hand sanitizer solution as well. And again, we're asking our parents to pre-screen their students if they feel sick, if they don't feel like that they should be able to stay home. Once they come to school, then we will again temperature check and do all the other school entry procedures when they get off the bus. So it really right now we're working off the same school schedules. We don't want to make anything more complicated than it is. Same school schedules, same routes. We anticipate that there will be a schedule that will be released 2 weeks prior to the start of the school year. But it'll be similar to the past, except that the parents need to know that their students will be going on different schedules, so different days, and then on those days go to the bus stops, and then we'll see you at school. We're not sure, even though we have that plan in place, you're not sure about how many students will show up at any of your bus stops until the first day that you're operating. So, they're making adjustments and plans for that. I believe they're trying to identify extra school buses that can be made available should there be an issue. Obviously, I think the director is trying to establish a hotline to be able to contact the bus substations should there be any miscommunications or issues arising on the first day or days of school. So all those plans are in place. We're working to make sure that we can support them on the face mask and hand sanitizer side. I know they have some supply, but our plan is to provide students with their masks, and I think we do have some supply that we can provide at least to get through those first couple of months, and then we'll see where we are in terms of those practices and procedures.
We do have some questions.
But they're assuring us they're ready to go. That's the bottom line.
We do have some questions from our online viewers. One of them asks, I'm curious about sports. If all these kids don't want face-to-face out of an abundance of caution, will they also be able to eat their cake and participate in athletics?
So right now, the decision is, first of all, we have to be authorized to restart interscholastics. We are taking the same approach that we have a plan. If the governor authorizes to go forward, then our plan is to move forward with our interscholastic sports plan as well, which would, of course, for us, it would start around January 25th would be the first day of practice. We're looking at 2 sports seasons, so it would be 2 blocks before the end of the year. And the first block would offer the low risk, the lowest risk sports that are available. And then the second block would probably be what we call more moderate risk sports. So we're talking like things like cross country, girls and boys volleyball might take place in that first segment, and then tennis and things like that. So the low risk sports we have a plan for, and there will obviously be a lot of protective measures that would have to be put in place, and we're following the national high school guidelines as well to ensure that we're aligning ourselves with what other districts are doing. So for those students who want to participate, we're not preventing them from trying out for the team and participating, even if they're in distance learning. So that's not we didn't make that we certainly are not going to we're not forcing our kids to come back physically to school just to be able to avail themselves of opportunities to participate in education as well as the extracurricular opportunities. So if you are in distance learning, you will have the opportunity to try out and practice once we're ready to go. And then anticipate a kind of a new type of sports season. It's going to be different. We're still working out some of the issues related to, making sure that we're aligned with the requirements that we see implemented nationally. We're in discussions about a rapid testing approach that might be piloted with our sports programs. And we're looking at we're actually having to sit down and go through what the rules are for spectators in facilities. So those are the types of things that are still ongoing. Again, we have a plan in place, and once we get the authority, we're ready to move forward.
Another one comment said, thinking of operational costs to have students back on campus, are these percentages worth the costs?
That's something we're going to have to evaluate and address. Again, if it's limited amounts of students on campus, that doesn't mean we need to go around turning on every light and every air conditioner. So it just depends on how the schools are going to manage those students, what classrooms are going to use, and so forth. So I don't know. I mean, for our personnel costs stay the same. Teachers and staff are still getting paid. They're just adjusting to this different environment where they're supporting students. And the operational costs will be mostly in utilities. There will be some contractual services that will be, for instance, the cleaning of the schools and the classrooms that are being used. There might be an adjustment to that. And we'll look at food services. I think food services, there'll be, we do plan to serve hot meals, available on the campus. That's something we'll have to get back and talk about that with our food vendor, because if there's 11 students on campus, maybe five want to eat lunch. How do we do that without having the full operation, at the school? So we'll be working through those based on our numbers. But that's a good question, and especially with our budget being cut $15 million this year, those resources are very important to make sure we manage them appropriately.
I wanted to follow up on nurses. Are they going to be at the schools, because they know that they've been deployed, to different areas to help with the response? Will they be returning?
Yes, the answer is yes, and also we are working with the Lieutenant Governor's Office of Public Health to put in place an MOU that will really kind of detail the relationship that our nurses are going to have with public health during this time frame, mostly because we do plan to be the first responders relative to any positive cases identified on campus, as well as the first responders when it comes to contact tracing. So it's very important with COVID-19 to very timely respond to any incidents that arise. And so we don't want any delays in trying to communicate with public health and so forth. We actually want to serve almost as agents of public health, with the appropriate authorities to be able to have our nurses go forward and do the contact tracing and then turn it over to public health after that first level response. So that's being worked out, and our school nurses are a critical part of that. So they are going to be returning to schools when we open. The other part, we have social workers who I think they're still deployed, but they're planning to return as well. And I think the Lieutenant Governor is just making sure that public health has put in place its plans for addressing, their needs. But we are partners. I think the understanding is is that with a government agency that serves, has 4,000 employees, and even at a third of our population, we're still talking about 10,000 students who might be on campus at any day. Then we're going to need to be prepared to address any issues, and we do plan to take care of our kids and our employees. And our social workers and nurses have been trained well. We've been on the front lines with public health and GMH during this time period. So they've been trained and are going to be good partners in terms of helping with the public response when schools open, and also with the community in general. So I appreciate the governor's support on that, because I do think that it's an appropriate recognition that if we do open schools, we're going to have a pretty solid team of people ready to respond should there be any situations that need our attention.
Mm-hmm. So parents, students, they're given this choice to return to face-to-face. What about teachers and staff? Well, what if they don't want to return and do face-to-face?
Right. Well, we did a survey of teachers and staff who felt comfortable returning. So it's not, we didn't want to go with making assumptions about their readiness. So what was good to see from those surveys, and we did about 1,800 teachers, so we got about 2,000. So 1,800 is a pretty good coverage of teachers who responded. So we know that there were, about a third to maybe 40% of teachers who expressed their willingness to come back to face-to-face. Some of them understand that the mission requires them to be there to do their, to be effective in their mission. Some of them understand the needs of our students. And then, of course, we know that there are those who are going to have some uncertainties and anxieties because of their particular situations, whether it's their home situation, their health situation. Mm-hmm. So what we're counting on is that the lower numbers enable the schools to make the adjustments accordingly, so that hopefully we can align the face-to-face instruction with those teachers who do feel comfortable being at school and able and willing to support the students who are returning. And that means that we shouldn't at the end of the day require every teacher to be on campus if there's only going to be that small of a population getting face-to-face education. So now that we're done, we have those numbers in hand. The schools, the administrators have some work to do to make those adjustments. We've been trying to be as accommodating as possible, through this pandemic situation, understanding that there's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty in the community. But that's why we did that survey. We really wanted to get an understanding of how our teachers, our staff felt. Same thing with parents and students. So these numbers actually align pretty well with what we're seeing in terms of the final registration. And so, that's good that we did those surveys and give us a little bit of a lead in trying to finalize these plans.
Mm-hmm. I was just curious, in the survey and the registrations for the return to face-to-face, do you kind of have an idea? Are you looking at more students in the South are willing to return to face-to-face, or Northern or Central?
I wouldn't say, at this point I can't say. I'd have to crunch some numbers more. We just got them in on Monday, and we're trying to sort through the percentages. But I would say that the numbers down south, of course, because of their lower population, so I'm not talking about percentages, but as you might anticipate, the overall numbers of students in our southern schools are low enough, are very low, that we do feel that the safety measures and practices can be effectively enforced with such a low number of students at the southern schools. As you get north, the numbers go a little higher, but of course we're still talking about low percentages and larger school facilities. So we'll be paying attention to ensuring that there aren't any schools that are out of whack in terms of or out of line in terms of their needs, because overall, the numbers are pretty low. I think when we look at the elementary schools, you're really talking about 10% of their total enrollment at school on any one day. And so, they should be able to accommodate them, but we definitely will be working with them over the next few weeks to make sure there aren't any concerns or issues that need to be, handled.
We saw Eleuterio Mesa. He was in line over at Ukadu trying to get vaccinated. because of, concerns that he had not only with comorbidities or health issues, but also the fact that, of his job and the interaction he would have with students. Where are you in conversations with public health and their VA CCP to try and move up the line, or are you comfortable where GBOE
Right.
is?
So our conversation with public health, first of all, we're very supportive. We're very supportive of the vaccination move. I mean, I don't know that we anticipated our schools being used for mission of vaccination, of mass vaccination. In fact, my recollection of the plan is that the field house was supposed to be the center for mass vaccinations. But public health requested Ukuru, and upon that first request, I said, for sure. I mean, get the vaccines, get them over there, and let them come in. While we are not back to face, because I think we definitely want to be a part of that strategy, not just the response, but if we can help with getting us through this final stage, I hope, then we want to be right there. So we allowed them to go ahead and set up and work with them to set up the 3 days of vaccinations that they did for the healthcare workers. And then we understand the shift now to those with high, who are in a certain age group, higher risk. We're supporting that as well. So our understanding is that the vaccines will go in certain priority order. I'm not sure yet where educators and staff will fall. That's definitely information we provided to the governor, so they can account for that. But what we assume, following CDC and the national discussion, is obviously the healthcare individuals, and then you're going to get those who might be over the age of 65 or that certain age group that is in high risk, and then from there they will proceed down the priority list. I know that the incoming Biden administration has recommended educators be among those top priorities. So we do hope that it's possible for us to have sufficient supply of vaccines, and then be able to meet the needs of our school employees. We did a survey, again, not a survey, we actually did an accounting of those who are interested in getting the vaccine within our department and within the schools. There are about 3,000 employees who are at our schools, and about 1,000 of them indicated that they would be interested in taking the virus. So about a third were interested, and we gave those numbers to the governor for planning purposes, and hopefully there will be supply so that they can they can reach that priority level. And the lieutenant governor was optimistic that we might be able to do that before the start of the school year, before January 19th. So that's good news. If that is the case, certainly hope so, and it'll just depend, I guess, on ensuring that enough supply is available.
So ultimate final approval by the governor, or she even given you any sort of indication which way she's leaning?
Well, I know she's leaning towards authorizing us to reopen. I think the timing, of course, is a big concern, and I know that she is probably, like many of us, but maybe 4 or 5 times more, wrestling with the decision, because it's really it is her decision first to authorize us to reopen, and that's going to be based on her assessment of the public health situation, and then based on that, it's our job to reassure her that we have the safety measures in place, that we have a plan to allow us to open up safely, and that we once we're given the green light, we will responsibly execute that plan. So I think we've done our part. We've finalized those plans. The board has given its blessing, and she has that information now that she can use to make a determination about whether or not to authorize reopening. And I think, of course, that authorization has to not only assess the risk in the community, but it also has to assess, are the schools ready? Are they going to be able to carry out their practices to mitigate the risk going forward? And I think to her, I would say that even if she gives us the authorization today, and even if we open up our school facilities on the 19th, we're still monitoring the change in the public health situation day to day. And if the numbers go dramatically in a different direction, that we're not going to be we're not going to stick with the plans just because we spent so much time putting the plan together. We do want to make sure that safety is the foremost priority. And so if we need to reverse or alter those plans because of public health, then we will do so. The board has given me that flexibility to make those adjustments in the interest of the safety and the health of our employees and our students. So I do think that we just have to be fluid and anticipate that we don't know the future. I think we're in a safe position now. I know she's worried about Christmas and New Year's, and so are we. That's why January 19th was kind of a good date, because it gave us a couple of weeks to make sure that we didn't see all of a sudden another surge in the numbers. That 19th came as a recommendation from teachers. They said, look, give us some time after Christmas, after New Year's, to see if we're maintaining the progress. And I think that's a good approach. And so we went with that. The board went with that. And, that's just another measure to give that assurance to our employees that we're taking their input and their interest into consideration.
Right, but 19 is the start of face-to-face. Isn't the 4th or something like that when the teachers go in for training?
Right. Well, there's going to be a mix. There's going to be a mix of training and so forth. But again, as the schools work that out, we'll be supporting them. Some of that might be virtual, and some of that will be at school. At school, of course, all the safety measures are going to need to be in place, just like we've done for those students. For teachers who've been on campus and in their classrooms, they've already been there. We're not having these big faculty meetings and so forth, so we'll have to make those kinds of adjustments. And also, we've been operating the grab and go, the food distribution, and so forth. So we've got a lot of experience under our belt as to how to operate, and so that experience will be important as we come out of Christmas and New Year's, to be able to do the necessary training but maintain a safe environment. So the administrators are going to have to either divide them up if they need to, do some online if they need to, just to make sure that we abide by the current safety parameters.
Would you need the governor to give you guys the final decision before the 4th or before the 19th?
Well, we hope that she'll give us her decision as early as possible. I think we're ready to go on short notice. I think we're always, DOE is just like that. If things change tomorrow, there's a storm, we have to do what we have to do. But I think in terms for everybody else to plan ahead, and for parents especially, and especially if they're working with their employers, for our buses, for all the stakeholders for whom the opening of schools has an impact. We wanted to make sure that we gave them enough time to plan and to make those arrangements. And of course, recognizing that at the end of the day, the public health situation changes. We're going to have to those plans may not come to fruition, but it's just good to know that there is a goal and a deadline in place, and that everyone can make their plans accordingly.
All right, John. Anything else you'd like to?
No, I think the only other. We did make some make an announcement about the internet services.
Yes.
So we are working to make that available in January for those who do want to stay online, and those hard copy students who want to move online. Internet access will be available, as well as a new. We are going to get new technology shipments coming in, so that we can start to expand those equipment into the elementary school level. So definitely that's something we're looking forward to doing. So that was another announcement, as well as the opening of community learning centers when we're authorized to do so, which will allow our schools to do after hours support for those who want internet and technology access after school to do their schoolwork. So we'll make further announcements when those dates are determined.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to all of you and to your listeners, and we hope everyone has a safe celebration.
All right.
So have a wonderful day.
Okay.
Have a safe day.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow, lots of information there from the superintendent of the Guam Department of Education. We also have on our Facebook, if you want to watch the press conference that they held at 4:15 yesterday, lots of information there. Also, there was another press conference